What's up, everybody? Welcome to Value Town. Episode 73. I'm ChanManV, and we've got an arena episode planned for today, as you can tell with the guests I have here. But I want to welcome Krip to the show. What's up, Krip? It's been a while.
What's up,
How you
guys?
been? What's up, guys?
Are we not welcoming the other two guys?
I'm going
What's
to
going
that. I'm going one at a time, dude. One at a
Let's start,
time.
man.
All right, I'm
Okay.
going
Yeah, that's
clockwise.
messed up, bro.
I'm going clockwise, dude. All right, Ratsmah, what's up, buddy? Welcome.
Hey, what's up, guys?
All right, cool. And ADWCTA, of course.
Hey,
How's
how's
it
it
going?
going?
This is like the original three we were supposed to have like last time I think we did the show, but you know, Ratsmah kind of left us left us a little hanging. What happened that time?
Was that really my fault? I don't remember what happened.
I don't
I got
actually.
uninvited.
No, we didn't get uninvited. Whatever. Anyways, so this is the arena episode that we were, intending for a while. But lots going on in arena. As you could tell with just Krip just being all over Reddit. Well, I mean, Krip's always on Reddit, but Krip's streak was all over Reddit this last day or two.
Yep.
Streaking with the 12 wins. It was 8 in a row, right?
No, it wasn't 8 in a row. It was 5 in a row, and then I tanked the run with
Oh, okay.
a quad evolve shaman, and then I got 3 in a row. So it was
Quad
101 wins in 9 arenas, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I did it just for the show. I just wanted to bring in some more viewers for you today. So
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. No, that's crazy. Quad evolve, man. Okay, that's crazy.
yeah, I think that deck would have actually been okay if I had like weapons and removal, but
Ah.
I didn't. So it was like play a bunch of stuff, hope it stays alive, then evolve it.
Yeah.
Which doesn't work all that well with shaman, as you'd probably guess.
Right. Well, guys, what we got planned today is going to do the class rankings. This is kind of just a general, I don't know, more of a look or a synopsis of the current meta in arena and just some of the things. Not quite as in depth as like ADWCTA's talk show that he does, but we definitely want to get just a general thing for the Value Town audience. So we're gonna do class rankings. We're gonna talk about what these guys' top 5 cards are for just all the new cards from Whispers of the Old Gods, and then we're gonna just have a discussion about arena events and like where are arena events, because we still have this big game mode that I feel like still doesn't get any love from at least the standpoint of events. And then we'll do some viewer Q&A at the end. You guys tweet your questions to just tweet them to me at ChanManV. And if we don't get any there, then we'll take a look at Twitch chat, at least just to get some in at the very end. Okay, so I guess arena. Let's talk about I guess just the general meta. I guess what are your thoughts just on the meta right now? We don't have to go in quite defining the meta yet, but how are you feeling about it right now? ADWCTA, we'll start with you.
About the meta, it is slow, it is value-based. I can't say I like it, but it's definitely very skill-based. I think this is the meta that the better you are, because there's more turns, there's more stuff going on the board, and if your fundamental skills aren't up to par, it's going to really hurt you. And if you aren't kind of figuring out exactly how greedy you can be on each turn, then that's going to hurt you too. In terms of how fun it is to play, it's a little slow. I don't know. I thought it was going to be very exciting, and it was for like the first week. And now we're at the point where I'm kind of getting bogged down into the arena meta, and it feels like it's a lot on the board, so it's a lot of work, and you have to do a lot of math. And I'm always against doing math, so that's where I think the arena meta is right now. Too much math.
Too much math. Okay, all right. Ratsmah, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, the meta did slow down a lot. It's changed from like past like GVG introduced like the first like very proactive meta where people started playing, they wanted to control the board starting on turn 2 or 3 very early. And then TGT kind of just made that more powerful by adding a lot of cards that kind of work well with controlling the board and being ahead early. But this is the closest meta we have to what used to be, which is, back in Classic, used to be very value-oriented and very slow-paced, card for card type thing. It's it's definitely a huge change in the meta.
All right, Krip?
I actually don't agree with that at all.
All right, here we go.
Here we go.
I like all my successful decks are just like 1 drops, 2 drops, 3 drops, and card draw.
Wow.
Maybe we just haven't advanced as a whole, but it feels like 1 drops and 3 drops and play rogue means wrecking all the slow players. Because that's what it feels like. It feels like when I'm playing a slow deck, I get run over by every warlock, and I get run over by every rogue. Because like the warlocks are much more zoo-like. Like warlocks in arena much more resemble zoolocks in ranked now,
Oh, wow.
like more than ever. So like it's really hard to beat them in the early game, and if you don't, it's impossible to win because they just draw 2 cards and you draw 1. So I don't know. I tried drafting slow and it didn't work out that well, so I draft actually more aggressively than before, and that's been working out a little bit better.
But even for your mages,
mean-
Krip?
I feel like every card needs to be either ridiculous in the early game or allow you to come back in the late game. And there's like very few cards that you should choose intentionally that don't do one of those 2 things.
I think like fast relative to how like you used to draft, because I know how like expensive your decks usually are or they used to be.
Okay,
I
that
think
could be fair.
fast means like, kind of where we're at. I'm not quite sure, but it's surprising that you think that the meta. I feel like maybe you're just doing better because you're playing faster decks, and that was always stronger even before.
Yeah, I think we said this. This is something that I pushed about 3 weeks ago, which is there's 3 ways to succeed in this meta. And the normal easy way, which is where I would say more than half of your drafts are going to naturally tend towards, is to try to outvalue your opponent. And if you're a better player, you'll win. If you're not, you won't. But that's a value game. You're going to fail at that in terms of drafting half the time because that's how it works, right? You're going to get a subpar deck half the time. And in those half of the times, what you want to do is the actually the more successful archetypes, like you were talking about, Krip, is aggro control and snowball, where you were talking about the rogue aggro control, right? You put down some 1 drops, some 2 drops, you get some removals, you hit the face, and the game ends, or you have enough reach to end the game at some point. It's very effective, but there's only a few classes that can pull it off. And I think even in those classes, like for rogue, if I'm trying to draft aggro control, I'll succeed maybe, I don't know, definitely less than half the time, maybe like 40%, a third of the time. And that's the class best suited for that kind of playstyle. And a paladin or a shaman with snowball is kind of a similar thing, I think.
Oh, I think warrior is the same too. I think all the weapon classes kind of have this.
Yeah, I agree about warrior.
Okay, well, why don't we continue the discussion, but let's kind of frame it around just the class rankings, because one of the things I did before the show, guys, is I had each of these guys tell me their power rankings for the classes and have them divided up into different tiers too, so just where the drop-offs are. So why don't we compare that? So let me bring that up real quick. And okay, so some of the folks obviously listen to the show via audio, so I'll kind of read them out real quick. So Kripparrians is starting from the best class to the worst class. Rogue, Mage, Paladin is tier 1. Tier 2 is Warlock, Shaman, Warrior, Druid as tier 2, and Hunter, Priest as the bottom tier. ADWCTA, tier 1, Mage, Rogue. He actually has 4 tiers, so we'll try to figure something out here.
No one told me.
I mean, everybody just got to tell me different things.
I want to add. I might put Druid in tier 3.
Really?
I haven't
Okay.
seen a single good Druid deck.
Wow. Okay.
Not even one.
Okay, so ADWCTA tier 2, Paladin, Shaman, tier 3, Druid, Warlock, Warrior, Hunter, Priest in the bottom tier. Okay, Ratsmah, tier 1, Mage, Warlock, Rogue, second tier, Druid, Shaman, Warrior, Paladin, and then tier 3, Hunter, Priest. So everybody agrees on Hunter, Priest being just the worst, and
So
in that order too.
I put
Yes,
my
in that
tiers in
order.
alphabetical order. So within it, that's not necessarily my ranking.
What?
I
I told you to rank them, dude. I mean, what
I
is
put them in
this?
tiers.
Okay.
Yes,
I have an
tiers.
extra tier.
Okay.
Does that make up for it?
That's true. Okay, so okay, let's talk about Druid. I guess the first thing to talk about is Druid, because I think there was a pretty big difference. Just having a 2-slot or a 3-slot difference is a big deal, just because we only have 9 classes, right? So Ratsmah, you actually have Druid at 4, and Krip actually has
Yeah,
Druid
but
potentially
looking
at
at
the
this, it
bottom.
kind of looks like everyone just puts it towards like the middle of the classes.
I would put it at the
And
bottom,
I think it's
actually.
just kind of preference. You
I-
want to make it tier 3.
I think it's just like from experience. I haven't played that many runs. I've played like, I don't know, maybe 40, maybe 50 runs in the expansion. I've never found a Druid deck that just kicked my ass, except for 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, 4 drop, and the fact that it was Druid made no difference.
Right.
So it felt like the traditional Druid decks just outpaced them, which makes sense. Like, I'm drafting faster decks. Druids are drafting more late game cards, apparently, and they're just getting steamrolled. And Druids don't have the tools to come back on the board. So I've just seen nothing good. I think I only had one Druid run. I went like 8 or 9 wins, but that was also my only run on the first week, and I heard the first week was a complete joke. So
I mean,
that doesn't really count very much.
Druids are just inherently more tanky. Like their hero power gives them a health and that utility PM, and also you get a lot of big taunts. I mean, that's what Druids are really good at: stabilizing and also just card advantage.
Well,
I don't know. Historically, I've always had like Druid as one of my better classes. So
here's how I played the decks that kind of work really well. You have 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drops, and 4-drops. Mostly 1s and 3s. I feel like 1s and 3s are like the big ones. Yeah, I don't pick Druid very much. Someone in chat mentioned that, but I've also played against a bunch of Druid, and I'm not even sure I lost to more than one Druid since the expansion came out. Like, that's kind of my point.
Wow.
Okay. My point is, like, you crush them in the early game, and the first big thing that they play, like, if they play their first 7-mana taunt, if you have an answer for that, they lose the game on the spot. Like, if you have a removal effect, a silence, or like a sap, they instantly lose because they go all in on their first big taunt minion when they're behind, and it's just so easy to beat that.
Yeah, so
I
one
don't
of
know
the things
about,
that's been happening with the Druid, and this is what really hurts them, is that the whole meta kind of went where the Druid spot was. So now if you're going to get a deck that does well in general, you're going to have a deck that's going to do well against your traditional Druid deck. And so that's really bad for Druid drafting a traditional Druid deck. By the time you get to 8-9 wins, every deck is there to beat you, because that's how they got there, by beating decks, a lot of decks similar to what your deck probably is looking like. So it does definitely hurt Druid. I mean, in OE, I definitely had Druid ranked a tier higher.
Yep.
I don't know. I wouldn't gauge a class's strength by like how players that you play against play. I honestly think Druid has a lot of room for players to get better at, and I still think it's like one of the better classes. And I was really close to actually putting it in tier 1. But
Wow.
you know,
Wow. Okay.
I don't disagree with your tier 1 on Warlock. I've seen some insane Warlock decks, so I can see that.
Yeah, yours is actually was pretty close. So ADWCTA, yours is in tier 3 Warlock. Is it top tier 3 or is it bottom tier 3 for Warlock?
It's so I'm in a weird position with the tier 3, because Warrior always seems really good to me, but it doesn't quite get there for a lot of other people, and so I have a difficult time rating Warrior. And Warlock is by far, in terms of what I see as an opponent, I get most scared of Warlocks out of anybody below I'm probably more scared of Warlocks than Shock. Just because if a Warlock deck gets to a certain point, you know what's in there. You know that they're going to curve out. You know they're going to snowball onto the board. And you better have something to deal with that. And if you don't, you're just going to lose. And being one of the, like I was talking about, the three successful ways to play in this meta, the aggro control and the snowball styles are rarely seen because it's just harder to draft those decks and they're class dependent. So you just see them less often, which means you can get a deck that goes like 7-8 wins doing perfectly fine without seeing a really good like snowball deck. And so your deck may really not be well equipped to handle it, or you saw one and you lost to it, right? And this will be your second or third loss. And so it's very scary. I'm a little surprised Warlock, Ratsmah has Warlock at number 2, but it definitely got a lot stronger in this meta.
it's just Warlock doesn't really need like synergy. You know, there's high synergy classes like, you know, Hunter obviously and Warrior, very high synergy classes, which are the reasons why they're like top tier in constructed play, but not so good in arena. But the thing about like Warlock is because you just play a lot of cards and you're playing a lot of cheap cards and it doesn't hurt you because your hero power, you get a lot of synergy with neutral cards as Warlock, and I think that's what generally makes any class in arena strong. Is just ability to make neutral cards good.
Fair. The last Warlock deck that I had won 12 wins, and it was just a bunch of like cards.
That's usually how it
It's
is.
just a bunch of singleton cards. Yeah.
No, like you
main
look at the
issue-
deck and you're like, why did it win? Did it curve out really well? Not really. It was kind of a normal curve. Did it have good big cards? Not really. Everything's kind of just average. Not a lot of class cards, and it felt okay. It played okay. So I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating Warlock.
The main issue with Warlock is when you get like a bad deck, you just can't win.
That's
Like
true.
that's the flip side of that, because like you're playing all these cards and you're playing them at a higher rate than most people can, but if the cards are like so poor quality, you're just like killing yourself playing worse stuff than your opponent. So that's why it's still like pretty balanced, I feel.
Yeah, so got to get that early
Like the
tempo.
bad decks are really trash for
I
Warlock.
think that brings up a good point. Like in this meta currently, I feel like this is the most like card quality influence meta. Like your results will vary like so much depending on the quality of cards you have, and it's so much worse than before. Back in Classic, if you had like I don't know, like one Flame Strike, two Flame Strikes, or if you just had like a Cellwalker or Azure Drake, usually just won games, card advantage. But it's actually come right back to that point back in Classic where you got a couple of good cards in your deck. It's going to carry you pretty far.
Azure Drakes were so unfair in Classic.
Cellwalker was still better, man. I've been a Cellwalker fan for so long.
Yeah.
All right, so with Warlock, Ratsmah, you had it really high, and but with Paladin, I think we kind of have a flip here where you have Paladin pretty low, and these two guys have it fairly high. Krip actually had it in tier 1, and it walked in tier 2. So why do you think Paladin's so bad, Ratsmah?
I'm just trying to be controversial.
That's right.
And
that's cool.
I mean,
that's cool.
The thing is, I think I played like one Paladin run post Old Gods. I just don't ever play Paladin. I just don't think it's fun. I don't really care for like how strong or like weak a class is. I'll just play it if it's like interesting. Paladin is just the play is too linear, and usually Paladin is one of those classes where on turn 4, depending on like what kind of big play you have, and if you have more, the better, right? You have different options to play, a different big play. It's just not fun, and I can't really say how powerful it is because I don't play it, but I haven't been seeing that many Paladins recently, and I don't know. I just don't feel like it's that strong anymore.
Well, do you lose to it much? I mean, maybe you don't play it, but you can kind of feel the power versus.
Yeah, I don't see other people playing it, and I don't really.
I don't see other people playing it either.
I kind of see it quite a bit. I do see quite a bit, but I do agree that we don't really lose to Paladin that much, because I think Paladin is kind of like that class where you have to make a lot of good decisions to win. But I mean, some of my most unstoppable decks, like almost all the losses are Paladins, just because like some of the cards are so insane. Like I have the most insane opener ever, but then he has Muster for Battle, so I lose. So
right.
It's a lot of those, and I can't say that it's weak. I can't even say that it's really mediocre on some of these. Like I know Paladin versus Rogue is one of the most one-sided matchups from what I've seen. And like I think out of my like outstanding run, when like 4 of those were Rogue, 2 went 12-0 and 2 went 12-2. I think all 4 of those losses were Paladins. And it seems to be a bit too coincidental. Like Paladin is just really good at stopping early game.
It's just a bad class, man. I'm so sick of losing to like it doesn't happen that much anymore, but I'm so sick of losing to like shield the minion to Muster. It's like the worst way to lose.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not that Paladin's bad. I feel like all the classes are so strong right now. Like any class can do well, and it was hard to gauge the middle classes, especially just because I think Warrior's pretty good right now, Drew's pretty good right now, Shaman's pretty good. Every class is really good right now. It's just very difficult.
Except the two at the bottom there. Yeah.
Very consistent there.
Well, okay, I think Hunter might be in a worse spot than Priest, just because Hunter is like not great against like anything. But like Priest is spectacular against Mage.
Yes.
And there's a lot of mages. So you can just make whatever Priest deck and play non-stop mages and get like high
I'm surprised you think that. I disagree. I think Mage is really strong against Priest. I think any class with removal cards that you pick heavily, especially like in Mage or Rogue, you tend to pick a lot of removals, and whenever you like clear a Priest's board, it's a pretty big gamble whether that Priest can get back on board to use their buffs and whatnot and their hero power.
Well,
it's true, but I feel clearing the board is so hard.
Yeah, like if you clear the board as the mage, you're not words. You just kind of use your mana, you use your cards, you clear the board. The priest will just drop more stuff, as long as the priest still has stuff. And the priest's hero power hard counters the mage's hero power.
I feel like you just need a flame cannon, the Dark Cultist, and then you win. I don't know.
That is pretty good. That's a pretty good combination of cards. That's for sure. Oh.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think Priest is above Hunter in that thing, mostly because if you taunt, right, this is the taunt meta. If we were to take I guess a description of the meta and put it down to one word, it's a taunt meta. And if your opponent plays a taunt, that means you get the initiative to react to it without needing cards that actually have initiative. Priest has a problem where none of their cards really, or very few of their cards compared to other classes, really have initiative. They're kind of reactive. They're in this on the board, which is the worst kind of being reactive. But if now in a taunt meta, your opponents are just laying stuff down and kind of underpowered stuff too compared to other really good cards, well, now that gives you a chance to do the buffs. It gives you more of a chance to get on the board. And if the game is going to drag out to 20-something turns anyway, you just get more and more of these chances. And we all know as Priest, if you get on the board and you can really stabilize there, you've got it, right? You have the best card advantage edge in the game, except maybe Warlock, questionable.
Yeah, you've been playing a ton of Priest recently, right? And Wakta, that's what you're telling me. Just because of this discussion you've been having with Merbs about what
Merbs is all about, Hunter is significant. Priest in this match. So disagree.
Jeez.
So I've been playing Priest. It's been going well. It's not like I'm racking up the 12 wins of Priest. But, you get 8, 9, 10 wins, and that's usually a pretty rare occurrence for Priest historically. So within this meta, considering they got okay-ish to poor cards, it's going okay, as opposed to Hunter, which has that Druid problem, I think.
Any cool discoveries you've made just been playing it, just having played it so much?
I get on the board so often by doing nothing. My opponent just misses drops or does something stupid or plays a taunt rather than try to remove my minion, even though they have something in their hand. And then I power word Tentacles or power word Shield or Veil, and it's over. Yeah,
the big thing is that we talk about you just use removal and these guys lose, but it's harder to get removal than it was before. And while most decks have some minions that are threatening, that have 3 cards over 6 or 4 cards over 6, and you just need to remove those. For Priest, it's very different because, like you said, you use Power Word Tentacles in a 3-drop, and you need a Polymorph for that. Give me a break, right? So I can kind of see where you're coming from with that. I do want to add that I've found Priest infuriating to play because it's mostly a gamble based on your opponent's answers.
Yes.
So while I think there's some redeeming qualities now, perhaps, that still not too eager to play Priest.
I agree. When I was playing Priest, I wasn't really fun so much as I was needing to test my theories.
Nice.
I mean, with Hunter and Priest being at the bottom, I think it goes along with proactive decks being a lot weaker now. And we talked about how people play more reactively. Hunter and Priest, you need to be on the board, and you need to be able to use that Priest hero power, or you need to be on the board early as Hunter to get that base damage in to close out a game. But if the meta has become so reactive, you got your Mage Rogue best reactive classes in the game, and then even Paladin is a pretty flexible class, can be played both ways. It's just the fact that Hunter and Priest, you cannot rely on getting on the board early and riding that tempo all the way to the end anymore.
Okay. Okay, so what would you say is the most improved class, just based on the expansion?
Shaman.
Yeah, I think that's what generally the consensus is. Just kind of want to see what everybody else thought. I mean, just if you guys thought the same thing.
Yeah.
Well,
I moved Shaman
I think
up.
Warlock improved by about as much as Shaman did. Yeah. I don't disagree with Shaman, but I think Warlock is almost the same. I feel like there's so many Warlock decks I'm playing against, and they all seem so good. So I think the consistency that Warlock brings now is quite high.
I think even since TGT, Warlock has been top tier. With the addition of Fearsome Doomguard and just more demons, it just you auto pick every demon color. What do you call it? Void color.
Void color.
And it's just a powerful class. That hero power, you can make so many different kinds of decks with that hero power. But yeah, Shaman definitely. Maybe Warrior a little bit.
I feel like Shaman still struggles from the same issues that it did before, where if you just have nothing, then you're screwed. I mean, the playstyle doesn't seem any different. It's just a few of the new cards kind of make it so the opponent has to think about what he has to do. It's I don't know, it seems like the typical Shaman deck is exactly as it was before, except you get
Evolve.
I don't know, a
Evolve.
Fel Reaver by default in your deck.
Fel Reaver, yeah.
Which is
right.
really good, by the way. It's really good. But,
ridiculous.
but that's the only change, and And like when you don't draw these cards, it feels like a crappy class. And when you do draw the card, sometimes you're losing by so much it doesn't matter. Like I play Shaman quite a bit since the patch. I definitely been doing better. There's no doubt it's improved, but like the losses are exactly the same as they were before. It's like even if I have the 7/7, I'm like, okay, he backstabbed my 2-drop, he killed my 3-drop for free. I'm playing a 7/7 into 5 minions from a rogue. You know?
Yeah.
Wow. Right. Might as well have lightning stone.
The lost are happening less frequently.
Yeah, right. I think the consistency went up a lot, and not in terms of how you're drafting the class, but in terms of the hero power and being able to outvalue your opponents. So when everything kind of slows down, the same thing what I was saying with the priest, where you just get to do stuff when you didn't get to do stuff before, while not having initiative necessarily. And so that was really bad if you had a tempo game and there's a bunch of minions, and on turn 5 they play a 3-drop and a 2-drop instead of a 5-drop. Your totems are just dead. They're always dead. There's nothing you can do with it. Now you just get to stick random totems on the board. They get really annoying, and you get your normal like style, right? Like I agree with Krip that the playstyle is the same. That has not changed at all. I just think it's more. The odds of the playstyle working out has greatly increased because your opponents have less removal and less tempo, rogue aside, and the playstyle, the situation where you just get steamrolled in the very beginning, you never get to get on the board, happens a lot less frequently. And so your odds just kind of shift up, even if the class really does feel like the same class with a few more powerful cards. Its consistency in practice, I think, just went up a lot. And that's one of the things Shaman was missing, was just getting those totems to actually do something in most games.
Okay, well, go ahead, Ratsmah. You got some more comments?
Yeah, I can close it out here. I mean, Shaman, I mean, it'll always be like a card quality, like base class. I don't think there's anything around that, just because the hero power has such a high variability of like how good it can be, as opposed to like how useless it can be. But it does seem a lot more consistent now.
All totems are the same. I treat all totems the same. They're just
equality
on the board.
In the deck with like
flame tongue
3 flame tongues,
throw
and a
'em
deck
to their
with like
death.
no flame tongues, they're not the same, dude.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean though. But once you have a flame tongue, all those
yeah.
things are the same. They're just bodies on the board that you're gonna throw away.
You just gotta draw that bad boy though.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, it wasn't that long ago that ADWCTA, you had that whole hashtag, Warriors need love too, and
Warriors need love.
and we still have we've seen some improvement with Warriors with the last 2 expansions, and maybe even 2.5, 3 expansions, but I think we're in the kind of the same place right at this point. I feel like with these bottom, at least Hunter. I mean, we haven't seen any changes. I think for these classes, we talked to Priest about a little bit, but what about Hunter? Like, are we gonna ever see Hunter in even just mid tier? You guys think? I mean, what would it need?
Well, Hunter's better now because there's fewer heals as opposed to the card pool that's actually selected from cards in Arena.
It's a relative thing. Okay.
Yeah.
There's also more taunts, though.
Yeah. There's more taunts, but I don't know. Hunter just does the same thing. I think the relative card quality is about the same. They didn't advance at all. Hunter's also a very difficult class to play. I think most classes, let's say half the games, you have to make the decision, can I win in a control game or do I have to start going face? In Hunter, it's when do I have to give up the control game and start going face in every single game?
Right.
Even if you're a great player, you have so many opportunities to screw up your win condition.
Yep.
So it's really hard to play, and even if you play well, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. I think if you look back at Nax, the late period of Classic, and the early period of Nax before the buzzer nerf, you had Hunter was a pretty mid-tier arena class. I don't know if it was number 5.
Kidding me?
But
I think I went 12-0 with Hunter in like a week twice.
Yeah,
and it was just quad unleash, 2-mana unleash. Get at me.
Looking insane, dude.
Exactly. So it's not unthinkable for Hunter to make a comeback. You do need. It was a combo deck. It was like the official combo arena deck, and they got rid of it for I think good reasons. We're just
all
living in
any class needs in arena is a ridiculous common card within this set that has the occurrence bonus that costs half the mana it should. That's
oh my god.
Well, hey, Shaman got it.
Yeah, Shaman did get it. That's true. Oh,
So, I mean, for Hunter,
it's free and with Shaman. Holy crap.
Yeah.
You kind of just need like more 1-2 combos. It's like Late Zuko was a great addition for Hunter.
Yes.
It actually put Hunter on the board, or like, before that it was so difficult to get early board control. But another card like Leibzuka, I don't know whether it should be a minion or a spell, could probably make Hunter pretty viable. But yeah, it is such a difficult class to play because I think that may be like the high skill requirement thing to do is to gauge like when it is like time to switch into just like a face game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Hunter probably deserves a lot of good cards just to try to convince people to play it.
Yeah, and you gotta, if you're thinking about this in terms of design for making the arena a more varied place, you want unique classes like Hunter and Priest and Warlock, more so than even Warrior or Druid, to be very viable. So then you see them, and you have to. Every time I'm playing Hunter or Priest, I'm playing a different game. I'm not playing anything remotely similar to what I usually play, and that's good. That's good for the longevity of the game. It's good to keep players interested, and it lets people like pick their favorite classes, specialize in it. Rogue kind of has the same idea to it, where it's a very special class you have to play in a certain way. Mage is vanilla, Paladin is pretty vanilla. Like you have your things that you do, but
I don't think Mage is vanilla. I think Mage, you kind of get to choose what you want to play.
I think Ado brings up a good point, and I totally agree, dude. Like most games are pretty linear. Like you'll see a 2-drop on 2, 3-drop on 3, 4-drop on 4. You play against a Hunter, you're gonna see crazy shit like 2-drop, 1-drop, 1-drop on turn 4. You're gonna see like insane things, and I feel like keeping us excited and making every game different is very important. You gotta like switch gears when you're playing against Hunter, and like there are certain classes that you do this against. Hunter is definitely probably the most prominent one. The one that comes to mind.
Yeah, and that's why I love facing Warlocks. I have a whole game plan against Warlocks, and I have a very high win rate against Warlocks, and I'm very proud of it. I focus on I mean not just hit face, but that's a very prominent part of it. You have to adjust your play, and I feel like 80% of players don't even do that adjustment, right? The like hit face adjustment, because if you want the Warlock to have less cards, you hit the face, you don't clear the board. He can buff his minion, clear your minion, but you would still give him less cards over the long run if you're thinking of playing a long game. So it's very backwards. But that's something that
if you're playing a short game, you're doing the same thing, right?
Okay, so
it's always the same. It's always smart,
every game.
Unless you need to clear the board so that you can buff, you're hitting face. And that's like, if more people realize that, I think they would have much higher success against Warlocks, and Warlocks will be knocked down a peg. But the reality is, I would say if I'm Warlock and I'm facing people, maybe a quarter of the people I can see trying to do that. That's probably even overestimating it. The rest of the people I see just trying to treat me like a mage, which means I'm better than I should be.
And that's the advantage we get. I mean, especially playing like Warlock or Hunter, right? Like when you're playing Hunter and your opponent like trades space damage, it's the most interesting thing to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the class rankings that we have for now. So I wanted to move on and talk about the top 5 cards actually you guys have chosen for the expansion, or at least the top 5 cards that have had the most impact on the meta. So let me bring that up real quick here. And okay. So again, just going to read these out real quick. Some similarities, as you can tell, the top row is pretty much all the same. But Kripparrian has, let's see, Nerubian Prophet, Bog Creeper, Flame, Wreath, Faceless, Ravaging Ghoul, Shadow Strike. ADWCTA has Nerubian Prophet, Bog Creeper, Aberrant, Berserker, Psychotron, Faceless Summoner, and Ratsmah has Nerubian Prophet, Bog Creeper, Squirming Tentacle, Corrupted Seer, and Twilight Flame Walker.
Okay, for the record, I gave 10 cards.
You did give me 10 cards. I chose the first 5.
I gave them in the same kind of order I do, where neutrals came first and then class cards. So
okay, yeah, okay.
That's
so
why the first
I'll let you add
neutrals.
a few. Yeah, we can add a couple of those too. Like your full list had.
Aberrant Berserker makes the top 10.
Yeah, it does. But I love Aberrant Berserker. Oh my god, I love that card so much.
No, but ADWCTA did have Flame Wreath, Faceless, and Shadow Strike also, as well as Divine Strength, Twilight Flame Caller, and Darkshire Councilman. So keep those in mind, guys. Okay. Yeah, definitely. But let's talk about the similarities first. I mean, obviously, this is consensus. It must be a consensus with, I think, most very good arena players. So talk about Nerubian Prophet. Krip, why don't you talk about why it's so powerful?
Well, if you guys think it's a slow game, I don't think you would consider that card like completely insane. It's a really good card if it's a slow game because you keep in your opening hand 3-mana 4/4. That's better than an ogre because it's an ogre without the chance that it costs you the game.
Right.
Specifically in the late game, the worst thing is when your ogre like just kills itself on a Boulder Fist or something just randomly. I mean, that's always fun. So it's usually better than a Boulder Fist ogre any stage in the game, with potentially much better. Often you keep it in your opening hand, and on turn 3 you have a card that in the given situation is as good as a 4/4. So your opponent might have like let's say a 2/3 minion. If you play a 3/3, it would do the same thing as the Nerubian Prophet. So you could play the Nerubian Prophet the next turn, and then it would be a 2-mana 4/4. And if you play it with a 2-drop, you generally have won that game.
Right.
So it's just a super power card because of the flexibility, but it's mostly because of the tempo potential in the early game. I feel 3-mana 4/4 or 2-mana 4/4 on turn 4. Those are generally game-winning plays. Yeah.
How many
about it.
Nerubian Prophets do you like to pick? Like if you had the choice of maximum, how many would you take?
I could probably replace every 3-drop in the deck, so I guess 6.
Wow.
maybe
Okay.
7.
6. That's cool. All right. Same thoughts from you guys? But ADWCTA and Ratsmah? Okay.
It's a good card.
Anything to add? Anything?
Just if you get in the late game, the best part, well, not the best part about it, the best part about its downside, because it looks like it's a 6-mana 4/4, and that's pretty bad. But if you get it in the late game when you're top decking or near top decking, the mana literally doesn't matter. It's any mana card that is a 4/4, and if you just look at it as a 4/4, it's kind of a normal card. You're not terribly upset by it. You're going to have enough 2-drops and 3-drops to for this guy to attack into if you have the board. And if you don't have the board, 4 health, 4 attack, very normal size. So even its downside, if you're thinking about the long term and you don't get it early on, is not that bad. There's just that awkward middle zone, and that middle zone really doesn't last as long as I think people may think it does in their heads.
It's like when you draw them on turn 3, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
My understanding was that this was like most impactful cards to the meta, not necessarily like strong cards, because they don't necessarily, those two things are not the same.
Right.
But I would say it definitely changed the meta, just because you don't expect such a strong tempo play, especially when someone's been holding in their hand. For them to like be behind on the board and then remove something and then play that for 1 mana or 0 mana is a huge board flip. Usually games are won and lost off like 2 mana, but this thing is like a 3-drop, arguably as good as a 4-drop. That's a 4-mana swing. It makes a huge deal, and it changes the way you play the game. It also changes the way you kind of play against other people when you think they may possibly have this card. So it definitely has changed the meta quite a bit.
Okay. Bog Creeper, another one that was very just similar between you guys. Nice big taunt. And Ratsmah, you were talking about just how powerful taunt can be, especially when we were talking about the Druid class. Talk about the strength of this and why it's so impactful.
Yeah, I mean, the stat allocation of it's great. It's better than Ironbark for cost. Like the 8 damage, the 2 more damage on Ironbark than this card is really not worth it. There's not too many more things that you'll kill, and there's not that many situations where you're going to need the 2 extra damage. And just having like a neutral card be a huge wall at the end, this is what makes a lot of classes weaker, and this is why we say Hunter sucks now. Is this is a neutral card, neutral Ironbark, that makes closing out games much more difficult, and it changes. It definitely it's just a huge change to like how long you kind of plan your like ending a game, because you can kind of expect baritons to come out towards the end.
Yeah, I think this extends the game. It's the big taunt that prevents the aggro decks from ending the game unless removal in their hand for it. So if they had 1 hard removal, they're going to need 2 now. If they had 3, they're going to need. If they needed 3, they're going to need 4 now. If they needed 2, they're going to need 3 now. And hard removals are less common now. On top of that, so it's made that entire strategy very much. Do you have the cards? Once you have the hard removals or the large removals, which is kind of easy to get in like Mage and Rogue, but kind of hard to get in most other classes, then you can do an aggro control style. If you don't have it, trying to do that, like say if you're a hunter, that's just going to be you gotta pray to either get the card or that your opponent just happens to not have these cards for many games so that you can win. And more than the bot group, but this whole meta is like that, right? Like looking down, I did put Cyclotron in there. It's much less powerful than a bot creeper, but still very powerful, and you still see it everywhere in the meta. And it completely wrecks Hunter, right? There's no hero power ping for the Hunter to ping the Cyclotron. 3 damage is enough to kill most of the Hunter minions that they're going to put out. So you're going to throw 3 cards into this 5 mana card, and you have no way to get around it.
It also changed how we draft too.
I do want to mention before we get off topic on the bog creeper, I think I disagree with most of the tier lists out there. I think the bog creeper is slightly worse than most of the people. I just compare it to Kraken. I think Kraken is better than bog creeper in every single class except maybe Rogue. Because with Rogue, if you're winning with a bunch of small minions, you play that. You basically get a free wave of attack with your small minions, which is typically better than Kraken.
Honestly,
but
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think we have Kraken above Creeper in every class except Warlock and Rogue. Actually, I don't know. Maybe Rogue Kraken is still even above Bog Creeper.
Kraken is actually a card I wanted to put on here, but it's not a new card. It just got so much stronger with this meta.
Yeah.
Like any huge cards, like good huge cards, are so good right now.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, I feel like Bog Creeper is as powerful as Kraken, but because it has no on-play effect, it's far less consistent. So,
Taunt is arguably an on-play effect.
Sort of. It's like
unless your opponent can remove it.
That's right, exactly.
And I mean the Kraken was always that it was 9 mana, and that matters less in a slow meta. So it's just a lot of things working in favor of the Kraken right now.
Speaking of removal, Krip, you have the Shadow Strike in there, and ADWCTA, you actually had that card too. I guess talk about the strength of that card. I mean, it's obviously another removal card that doesn't require a combo for Rogue and.
Right. So Rogue had like, I don't know if they had more or less removal than Mage, but let's just say they had a lot compared to most classes. And Mage, I mean, they got like that new thing that scales off your mana, but who are we kidding? And then Rogue got actually a good card. And it's in the common slot. So in a game where removal is premium and everybody has less and Rogue has more, this is a pretty influential card.
Okay. The way I like to look at it is like with a lot of like cheaper removal, you have a lot more room to draft greedy, more expensive minions. And Rogue being such a flexible class, that could already be played in a very heavy control manner. It makes that playstyle so much more viable and makes drafting so much easier for Rogues, where you can just, all of a sudden you're drafting a slow Rogue deck and you're okay because, Sinister Strikes are coming up, or, you already have some in your deck. Oh, Shadow Strike, sorry. Not Sinister Strike. But, it's a great card, 5, a lot of things that are in at 5 health, too.
Yeah. I use the Shadow Strike over Eviscerate in a few constructed decks. Decks that have trouble comboing cards and don't care as much about face damage as board control. I think Shadow Strike is better than Eviscerate in constructed. And I think that doesn't resemble every arena deck. Some arena decks you definitely want to go face with 4 damage, potentially. But if you have like a very zoo-like Rogue deck, like mostly sticky minions and mostly high health, low attack minions, and very few easy combo activators like backstabs and 1-drops, I think Shadow Strike could potentially be better than Eviscerate. And Eviscerate's a pretty good card in Arena.
Yeah, that's true. So, it's a Death Rattle-ish kind of Rogue, I guess you could say.
I think the key part about Shadow Strike is it's 5 damage. Nothing's 5 damage. So it absolutely wrecks expectations. Not that you have much against the Rogue, but to whatever extent you thought you were safe, you're now 1 more damage not safe.
Yeah, it almost makes like every 4-drop, almost every 4-drop in the game, except for the 6.
Yeah.
Nope.
And in the Flame Wreath.
If your opponent's on turn 4 and you played first, so that you get to play your 5 mana first, you Shadow Strike, you play a 2 mana card. Could be a Defias Ringleader, could be not a Defias Ringleader. Either way, you're looking really good now as the Rogue.
Yeah.
And they just played a Yeti, which should be unstoppable.
I do also want to mention
major downside. Sorry, go ahead, dude. Go ahead.
Sorry. I think Rogue is the only class that you want to hero power sometime in the first 4 turns. So
Yeah.
you also don't need as many 2-drops as everyone else, which means you can have higher quality early game, but that actually stresses the 1 and 3 slot more. So the fact that it's 3 mana actually plays into that a little bit as well.
I mean, the only
Yeah, that's
downside it really
good.
has is it doesn't go face. But how often are you in a situation where
Can
you need
go
that game to
face.
close out?
It can go
It
face?
can. It can if they're at 30 health.
Oh,
Or
But,
8, Major Domo.
Mhm.
It can happen.
Major
You know,
Domo.
there's not that many games where you need to close out a game with damage in Arena.
Right,
So,
right.
and that lack of flexibility is fine.
Speaking of removal, there's like 3 other cards that they're different for all, just between the 3 of you guys that have removal battle cries. So we're talking Ravaging Ghoul from Krip, and as well as Twilight Flamewalker and Corrupted Seer from Ratsmah. So those 2 cards are pretty surprising, Ratsmah. Why don't you talk about that? Does that just have a lot to do with the really quick decks?
Which one? Which two?
Just the Corrupted Seer and the Twilight Flamewalker.
Okay, so the Twilight Flamecaller, I think I had this grouped with Ravaging Ghoul because they pretty much are very similar cards. The main purpose and the big difference is, these like what the 1 health minion flood doesn't happen as often with these cards. It's a great card against certain classes like Warlock or Paladin, and it just makes those classes that were much stronger before a lot weaker, and definitely impactful to the meta.
Okay, what about Corrupted Seer? I mean, it seems like a very expensive card for what it does.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
such a small body.
it is. It's really expensive, but the utility of it's great. I mean, you can't not expect AoE from every class anymore. Like usually you'll flood against like warriors um, or like rogue even you'll flood against. But now with Corrupted Seer, you got to kind of watch out for that. And it's picked often enough that you can kind of like anticipate it happening, especially with it being so expensive. And you keep your eye on your opponent's cards. And yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I think with no real board clears being introduced in the game, and thus saturating the card pool even further, you almost flood against everything, and I kind of see that against me as well.
Yep.
So, like, a lot of the clear cards have to do with how much credit you give your opponent for possibly having that answer. And in a lot of situations, you just don't care. Like, if you play against the board clear, if they have it, well, they're going to win. If they don't have it, well, you're going to win. And these are just cards that punish those type of plays. And those plays are more common now because these cards are rare. So the few pieces that we did get, like Corrupted Seer, make a big difference. It's very obvious when you play against the mage. You play against the mage, how many wins do you have? 5 and 2? Are you going to play against Blizzard? No, you're not. And then you get Corrupted Seer and you lose the game. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And that's why I actually feel Ghoul is better than the Twilight Flamecaller. I think the cards are basically the same thing as Ratsmah said, but they have the difference in how much credit you give for that effect. Are you going to expect a mage to do 1 damage to multiple targets? Yeah, kinda. But are you going to play
Really?
around a whirlwind
Expect that?
effect? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I feel
you
like
gonna
Mage in the early game has no good AoE clear. Like, what do you have? Arcane Explosion and
I've seen Arcane
Missile?
Explosions.
They're not
Missiles.
I've seen Arcane Missiles. I've seen Flame
They're not even
Wakers.
gonna pick though.
Mages really like to pick bombers, jugglers, everything. I don't know. It's gone wrong a lot.
I mean, it's
again-
definitely less. It's more hidden with Ravaging Ghoul, but with Twilight Flamecaller, I think it's just as good in Mage as Ravaging Ghoul is in Warrior. I think it's nice to have that utility of not getting rushed down because that's one of your major lose conditions as Mage because you're playing such a high value class that generally is just one of the most powerful. And like your lose condition is getting rushed down, then Twilight Flamecaller is a great card to have in your hand.
Well, that's kind of where I disagree. I think if they were both Mage cards, it'd be as good. If they were both Warrior cards, it'd be as good. But I think it being a Warrior card makes it better.
Oh, I see
Yeah,
what you mean.
I think Ravaging
Sure.
Ghoul is insanely good in the Warrior. It's a whirlwind effect when your normal whirlwind effect is attached to a weapon that you can't use on the turn. So it's a completely unexpected thing for Warrior to do. It's not a death spite. it's got the surprise factor there, and it's a 3/3 body. Like we're talking about its effects, but Twilight Flamecaller is the same mana for a 2/2 body. That's one extra mana's worth of tempo on the board, which is worth a lot, not just on turn 3, but overall. And also, warriors tend to pick more, well, as much as, if not more, things that require self-pings, because they have things like Cruel Taskmaster, they have things like Battle Rage, and so Ravaging Ghoul's downside isn't even necessarily a downside all the time for warrior. I would put Ravaging Ghoul ahead of Twilight Flamecaller. But to go back to what Kripp was saying about the removals like consecrations and I don't know, maybe health fires, just the board clears, and how they're not seen in the arena anymore as frequently. I get this comment so often from Twitch chat where I'm like Kripp, I don't play around them unless there's absolutely no reason not to play around them. It's a pretty minor consideration for me when I'm playing against classes now, and a lot of people who are good arena players or are frequent arena players, they're still in the mindset that you should be playing around all of these cards all the time from a earlier meta, and that's really just not the case right now. And I think you get, like, if you go to any of our channels, we'll all take flack for not playing around these cards, but more often than not, it's just correct to not play around these cards, especially if like you're playing like aggro control, like Kripp was saying, and or if you're playing snowball. That's just the other good archetype. Like, that's what you have to do. That's where your power is. If you don't do that, I don't know what, like, you're just hurting yourself in the long run just to not get screwed over and be embarrassed. Like, get screwed over, be embarrassed. You'll have a higher win rate.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice.
Right?
Yeah. That's actually really good advice. And I guess it's just one of these things where, like, Ratsmah, you were talking about the threat's there, and that's kind of why it's meta impactful, but is the actuality there, Adwocta, like, when you're scoring these cards, do you score these cards higher, in terms of whether you should pick them or not? And it sounds like it's not quite that way. It's good that they exist, and it's good that, that the threat's there, but generally speaking, it doesn't sound like it is being used quite to that extent.
Talking about Twilight Flamecaller?
Yeah, just general. I guess a lot of these work. I mean, Ravaging Ghoul obviously is just powerful for
The
lots of
Flamecaller
reasons.
has another perk that we didn't talk about. It's that like sometimes you do play around board clears because it's not costly. Like you play around Flame Strike by playing like 3 minions with 5 health or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And the Flamecaller is good because it kind of punishes that. You actually see that kind of a lot. At least I tend to do that, where you can do Flame Strike +1.
Right?
Sometimes they play around Flame Strike. Nobody plays around Flame Strike.
It's a
+1.
kobold geomancer all of a sudden. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. All right, last card to talk about, Aberrant. I mean, the Faceless is pretty obvious. I think the Faceless is a nice 7/7 at 4, so extremely good. But the Aberrant, that's a surprising card.
Oh, Aberrant Berserker it was always my sleeper pick for most like the largest difference maker of the common neutral cards between a good and a bad. Like, you look at Nerubian Prophet. I guess Nerubian Prophet has a skill in terms of when you play it. Do you like let it keep costing less and less mana? You basically gain 1 more tempo each turn you hold it, or do you just play it out to get the tempo a bit earlier? Because it's usually the best tempo card that you can play once it becomes 3 mana. But Bog Creepers, Psychotrons, they're big taunts. You play them when you need a bigger taunt. It's not the most skill related card. Aberrant Berserker, when you play it over a Yeti, when you play it to try to get that 5 attack, because if you don't get the enrage effect, it's a 3/5, and those are not so good in this meta. But once you get the enrage effect, in order to anticipate your opponent's likely next moves and to have that 5 attack matter, that's game changing when you're playing such an on the board kind of game. And Aberrant Berserker lets you do that. Like, if you need to play it as a 4-drop, it doesn't really matter. You play it as a 4-drop because you don't have other things to play. But later on in the game, or when you're deciding attack order or what you're removing with your small removals, the Aberrant Berserker's Enrage effect is this game's most influential enrage effect that we see. Like, it's so much more influential than a Monty Berserker outside of Mage. Because you can actually, to a reasonable degree of certainty, force your opponents to play different types of games just by having this guy out there, or they get punished fairly hard. Not like necessarily game winning every time, but hard enough that you'll swing back maybe 2-3 more tempos worth than what they were anticipating before. Like on turn 4, 3 attack is fine. On turn 5, 5 attack is great. 4 attack is not so great.
I'd like to add that it's also really good for playing around AoE. Like you just put this on any board that's a little bit low health, you know, and then bam, you got the Amani effect or the Raging Morgan effect, where you just, you know, kind of punish them for clearing or trying to clear.
Do you guys think it's better than ChanManV Yeti?
No,
I do.
never.
Wow. Okay.
I think on the tier list I rated it the same.
It's kind of why, like, you're talking it up and everything you're saying is right, but I still don't think it's better than like the vanilla 4.
Yeah, I think it's too hard to get that enrage effect to be actually good.
Here's what usually happens with the Aberrant Berserker. If it's on 4, you still don't always get great value, because if you don't have board control, then your opponents, like a lot of 3 drops, I mean, we can just look at the top of the list, have more than 3 health. So you see the 3 drop trade in it, and the 2 drop finishes it, and that makes it kind of crappy. Like the 4 attack breakpoint is actually pretty important for 4 drops, so much so that 4 4s might be better than 3 5s in a lot of situations.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that on turn 4, this card is not as good as a Yeti, but you're more likely to play a 4-mana card not on turn 4 than on turn 4, especially with the extended games. But even without the extended games, that's just how the math works out. And this also has the larger impact when it comes to stopping the 2 archetypes that we're talking about that have the highest win rate that you're watching out most for in when your run goes very high at win rates, which is aggro control and snowball. Yes, in aggro control they'll probably remove it, but it's at least got 5 health, right? So it's basically a Yeti if they're actually just using a spell to remove it. But if it's a snowball deck, it really does need something with 4 health, which they will have less than half the time. Something that will take care of an Aberrant Berserker the way you're describing. That's not in the same way that they'll be able to take care of a Yeti as well. So if you see things like Scarlet Crusader, that deals with both kind of similarly. If you only need 2 damage, something like Harvest Golem deals with them both the same. It is the 3 4s and the 4 4s that you do see that where the Yeti shines more on turn 4. So I do agree that Yeti is better on turn 4, but Aberrant Berserker is better almost every turn after that. When it comes to, like, if you have any amount of control over what you're doing instead of like just having to play a card, right? Like if you just have to play it, it's not that much worse than a Yeti. If you can actually plan your moves because you're given that luxury, which you are more often in this meta, then you can get the extra value, and that's what I like about it. I think on the Lightforge tier list, we rated the same because I think part of that is Merps not seeing this card the way I see it, but we also just didn't want to step out there and say like, yes, everyone pick Aberrant Berserker over Yeti.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Please, guys. Please.
Right.
Bring it on.
Oh man, they're gonna all be blaming you, man. Otherwise, like
It's
after this
higher
show.
in Mage and I think Warrior too.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. That's cool. All right. Well, that concludes the cards. You know, hopefully you guys will